Good morning, Bucknutters. It is Thursday, October 6, 2016. I'm Dan Rubin. This is the Bucknuts Morning 5 and change. If it's Thursday, it can mean only one thing. 24/7 Sports Director of Recruiting, Steve Wiltfong, has carved out some time for us. Steve, how goes it?
Good morning, Daniel. Enjoying my smoothie. Great day here in Indianapolis area. Socialism coming to college football, man. That's the plan. It started with schools not being allowed to have bigger media guides than other schools. Now there's rules to media guides. There's all kinds of rules on official visits where you can't imitate a game day experience because it's not fair if your game day experience is, or excuse me, not official visit, like an unofficial visit, you can't imitate, not in season, you can't imitate a game. So for instance, I'll just use Notre Dame as an example. You can't have the kids run out of the tunnel if they're there for camp. You can't imitate a game experience because if your game experience is better than the other school's game experience, it's not fair. Now, the new rules, we're still trying to make it even fair. There's haves and have-nots in college football. It's just the way it is. And I hate the new rules. Sorry I went on a tangent there.
That's all right. We will get to the source of the gestalt there in a minute. First, I want to talk about a big deal, and that's Marvin Wilson. He's 6'4", 329-pound defensive tackle from Bellaire, Episcopal in Texas. We've started hearing a lot more about him since the Oklahoma game when Oklahoma made the super wise decision to put him closer to the Buckeyes bench, and then when the Buckeyes disrobed them on the field, he became more interested. You wrote a great article. I thought, opened my eyes to him a lot more this week. Talk about what you heard and maybe fill in some stuff that you weren't able to get in there.
Well, I still think Ohio State's got work to do for the nation's number one ranked defensive tackle for 24/7 Sports in Marvin Wilson, arguably the top player in Texas. But I was surprised to find out that he was an Ohio State fan. Maybe that had been reported beforehand, but his coach, who I have a good relationship with, mentioned to me that Marvin, before the recruiting process started, or as it was starting 2 years ago, his coach asked him who he grew up rooting for, and he said Ohio State. So Ohio State then kind of faded as the process picked up and the opportunity to stay closer to home, and the word warmer weather was thrown around and things. But then Marvin got a chance to see Ohio State play in person, and so he's going to come up and check them out again. And Texas is obviously struggling a little bit right now. LSU, the other school I had high on the list, there's some questions with what they're going to do moving forward also. So perhaps this opens the door even more for Ohio State. Still going to be a lot of work to pull him, I think, but I give Ohio State a puncher's chance, that's for sure.
Talk about him as a prospect. A lot of times these big guys are very heralded because they haven't had the chance to play against much guys their size. From what you know about Wilson, he's the real deal.
Yeah, absolutely. Number one defensive tackle in the country for a reason. And Marvin came into high school and thought he was going to play college basketball. So that's the kind of athlete he is. He didn't stretch out probably like he would have liked to. But he's a really good athlete, good feet, got some.
At least not vertically.
To him. Right. He didn't stretch out vertically. He didn't get to 6'7" or what have you. But yeah, from a wide perspective. From a wide perspective, he's over 300 pounds. I mean, he's an imposing guy at the point of attack. You put it all together and you got a 5-star.
Do you think the fact that they're in such good shape with guys like J.K. Dobbins, Jeffrey Okudah, Baron Browning has any effect on Wilson?
I mean, it didn't before. I think it had more to do with Marvin seeing Ohio State play. Now that could be an added bonus down the road when he gets closer to making a decision, that opportunity to have some familiar faces in the locker room that he knows from the home state, because I do think Ohio State's going to land Jeffrey Okudah. I've been saying that for months. That's been the absolute pulse of the recruitment. And then this season certainly not hurting that And so Ohio State battling for Baron Browning also. So they hope to get a few more guys out of Texas. But they obviously have JK committed. I think they'll get Okuda, and they'll take a swing at Marvin and Barron, who are coming in at the same time for the Michigan game Thanksgiving weekend.
People don't need me to tell them this, but if you go into Texas and take those four guys out of there, I'm not sure where that would rank on all-time recruiting achievements, but it will be very close to the top.
Be insane.
Another guy that's really bubbled up lately, especially after his performance on national TV recently that everyone got a chance to see, is Bubba Bolden, kind of right now, the prototype size safety. Good Lord, he looks like he might grow into a linebacker with that frame. But what are you hearing on Bolden? Are all signs pointing to Columbus, as we've been hearing?
Well, some guys I really respect have put in an Ohio State 24/7 Sports crystal ball forecast in favor of the Buckeyes for Bubba Bolden. I asked the source this morning on the Ohio State side of things where they thought things stood, and they said kind of what we said last week on the Bucknuts Morning 5. It obviously doesn't hurt when you got Ty John Lindsay, Tate Martell, and Haskell Garrett committed. I was struggling there, but still got to get them to campus, still got to get them on a visit. So until that happens, you don't truly know. But it's obvious Ohio State's in the lead group, and, we'll see what happens. But, man, he was the best player in that game against Aquinas, I thought he lived up to his billing as much as anybody in that football game. Like I said last week, he's an absolute tone setter in the secondary. He'll come up and smack you in the mouth. He's very rangy, very versatile on that back end. Just a top 100 recruit, a U.S. Army All-American, a guy we love at 24/7 Sports, and easy to see why he's coveted by the Buckeyes and several others.
And I always believe this. I think I believe this almost more than anybody else. But as we see Malik Hooker rise up the draft boards in his first year as a starter, I think that can only help with a guy of that ilk. You started off by lambasting the NCAA, as I enjoyed to do. Now they have a rule coming out with the dual signing periods. We don't even need to go into what Urban feels like about this. He was so adamant about this in a press conference recently, being against it. Made a ton of great points, and he doesn't get political on stuff like that unless he really feels strongly about it. What's your vibe? Maybe bring everybody up to speed on what the latest announcement has been and what you think is going to happen.
Well, there's two things that really drive me nuts about the new proposal. But real quick, people always point the finger at the NCAA. It's the NCAA Council that's basically being voted in by the folks in college football. So the NCAA really doesn't care. They're the governing body, the conferences, the schools within the conferences are the ones that are trying to push for this proposal. So you need to point the finger at like the other schools across the country that are trying to put in favor of two early signing periods. They proposed one for June and one for December, and then they also limited the amount of camps you can have from a 30-day period. There's two 15-day periods in the summer where colleges are able to host camps. They want to condense it to just one 10-day period. So I disagree with both of those things. We don't need an early signing period. I truly think the motivation behind the early signing period is because schools don't like that their kids are getting flipped. Well, that's not for the NCAA Council to govern. It takes away opportunities from kids that, maybe Ohio State or Alabama doesn't offer you in June, but they offer you in January. But if you've already signed with Maryland or Mississippi State or Purdue, you're just not. An early signing period that means kids aren't potentially getting dealt all their cards. In a long story short, so we only need one signing day. The system works just fine. And I got a story coming out later today. Hell, Iman Marshall and Jack Jones, who both went to USC, didn't even sign letters of intent. So I'm fine with the highest to high profile guys never signing. Everybody else signing in February, and everybody knowing where they stand with each school by the one deadline. And if you're a long-time commit, give me a break. on the NCAA doing those prospects a favor by stopping schools from calling them. I guarantee you that recruits dictate, for the most part, how often they're taking phone calls. So, and a lot of them do like the attention, and they like the networking aspect of it, and whatever. That's not for the NCAA council to police there. But even more nauseating to me is the camp rule. That's taking opportunities away from kids to get in front of college coaches and earn opportunities. And that's not just for the biggest schools. I mean, Michigan gets the most press when it comes to camps because Jim Harbaugh asked for it. But Ball State, Miami, Ohio, Toledo, Bowling Green, those schools are absolutely pounding the pavement more than anybody in the summer looking for prospects. And when kids generally only have one or two scholarship offers, it's from those schools that are going out and seeing as many kids as possible and getting as many kids as possible to come to their own camp. You condense that down to 10 days, it hurts those schools, and it just hurts the prospect. Get 30 days, that's fine. If you're Hugh Freeze and you don't want to go out all 30 days, you don't got to. If you're Urban Meyer in Ohio State, you don't need to have 30 days worth of camps when you're recruiting from a smaller pool. But if you want to, who cares? Who cares, right? And if you don't want to work for a coaching staff that goes out 30 times during the summer because you want to hang out with your family, well, then get a job coaching somewhere else where they don't do that. You know, I just think those are two things that don't need to be policed, and they're all bringing them in to even out the playing field even more. And I think it's ridiculous.
The playing field's not supposed to be even. It's a meritocracy. There's a reason Ohio State and Alabama have gotten where they are. They've earned it. It's ridiculous. The NCAA continues to be just dream squashers. This is going back to the camp thing we talked about when they moved it early in the summer, and then they had to change it. It's terrible. So,
look, hard work translates. I mean, there was a time where Stanford sucked. Now, I know they're coming off a bad loss, but they are truly one of the top 8 programs in college football right now because they rolled up their sleeves. They put a system in place that works for them. They got it done. Same with Michigan State. You know, all within the same rules that everybody's working off of. You know, so it just, you know, this is rewarding people. These rules, in my opinion, are hurting kids, and then also rewarding people that don't work as hard. And just because I like throwing it out there, top to bottom, Ohio State's as well-oiled a machine in college football, from Urban Meyer to the assistant coaches to the strength program to Mark Pantoni and his staff. And yes, they also have the added bonus of working at Ohio State. But if you picked all those guys up and moved them to a different institution, they would quickly build that into a winner, super quickly. In fact, or if you took everybody with the exception of Urban Meyer, I think everyone else, but they learned from the Urban Meyer blueprint, they would be successful. You know, it's just nauseating to me, Dan.
That's a great point you finished with, is because, you know, we have coaches coming through here on the reg now, getting the blueprint, and apparently it works at Houston, the blueprint. So that blueprint is somewhere big.
They're coaching well. They're coaching well down there. There ain't no question about that. They inherited some good players, and then they've developed them to another level. And then,
but like you said,
that's a quick turnaround.
The system, the culture, the recruiting, the attention to detail. It's fantastic. Attention to detail, Steve Wiltfong's specialty. We appreciate him stopping by on what's a very busy morning for him. Steve, have a great day, brother.
Appreciate it. See you guys.